Okay, hi everybody and welcome to week 2 of Make a Change. So week 2 we're going to focus on a balanced diet. So this week we're going to discuss what a balanced diet is, a little discussion about some of the key messages from each of the food groups and why we should be including them in our diet. So first off though, just to recap from last week. So last week we looked at portions and portion sizes. So hopefully you all got on okay with those. Hopefully you all set your goals and managed to achieve those. What I would say is going forward though, we also now don't forget about those portion sizes. We need to keep working on those portion sizes and keep them in mind as the programme progresses. So it's not a case of week 1 done, forget about it. What we want to do with Make a Change is build on each week as we go through the whole programme. So any questions or any time, obviously just get in contact with myself or Sam. But this week we're going to focus on a balanced diet. So you've got your booklet, which again has the Eat Well guide in it. We're going to email you out a kind of A4 PDF of the big Eat Well plate as well, so you can maybe print that out if you want and put it up, just as a reminder of what a balanced diet looks like. So we'll email you that out with the rest of the supporting information, which you'll get shortly. But let's start just working our way around the plate. Just giving you some of the key information from each section and then taking it from there. So I'll start off in the same place, so let's look at carbohydrates first. So carbohydrates, as we know now, are your bread, your rice, your pasta, potatoes, rolls and bagels. So the kind of starchy foods. Really important part of a diet. They're quite often given a bad press, and quite a lot of fad diets out there kind of eliminate them. And what we've made clear and what we hope you understand is Make a Change is not a diet, it's not a fad, it's a lifestyle programme. So what we want to make sure is that we include these in our diet because they're really important. Carbohydrates give us energy, which we obviously need to go through just our daily activities. If we're doing any exercises, out walking or one of our exercise classes, then you need to make sure you've got enough energy to do those. So a really important part of the diet. So we should be including them. I guess the main message here is that carbohydrates are not all created equal. So there's some better options, and what we want to focus on is having more kind of complex carbohydrates, so avoiding the simple carbohydrates. So what we want to look at are things like the whole grain variety. So we've got our whole grain bread over white bread. And the main difference is, and why we're going to encourage you to eat more of the whole grain, wholemeal variety, is quite simply one word, and it's fibre. So fibre is really important. Fibre is mainly related to keeping us regular, so to help prevent constipation, which is important, but fibre's got a whole host of other benefits in the body as well. Certainly relating to blood sugar levels, it helps to slow down the release and the breakdown of sugars into the bloodstream, so it helps to maintain nice steady blood sugar levels, which is really important. It also helps to reduce of certain types of cancers. So it's a really important part of our diet and something we all need to make sure that we're getting enough of. So to do that, it really is the kind of whole grain, wholemeal varieties of this type of section that we want to be eating. Personally, for myself, I'm not a big fan of whole grain pasta, so I tend to eat the white stuff, but I do tend to eat everything else in the whole grain variety. So all my breads, rolls, bagels, that type of stuff, I tend to go for whole grain. I don't eat pasta very often, so I feel for the amount of times I eat pasta, I may as well have the white stuff because it's what I enjoy. And I think that's quite an important part of Make a Change, is you've got to do what's right for you. So it's not about necessarily eating the perfect balanced diet, it's just about eating one that's a bit more suited and a bit more balanced to maybe what you were having previously. So really the key thing with this section is the whole grain, whole meal, high fibre choices. So that's something we want you to think about and maybe look at where you can switch some of the foods that you're already eating. There's some quite simple stuff such as a 50-50 bread. That's quite a good option if you really don't like wholemeal bread. You can maybe try the 50-50. That obviously just gives you a bit more fibre, but isn't taking you into the whole grain stuff. So have a wee think and see if there's anything from this section that you can maybe change. So the next section is a dairy section. So that's your milk, cheese, yogurt, things like that. So with this section, a really good source of calcium, which is really important for our bone health. Also a good source of protein is the dairy section. But again, it's one of the main things that you might need to be mindful of, is this section also tends to be quite high in fat, can be quite high in salt as well. So you might need to think about some of the choices you have in here. So things like milk, I think we know that obviously skimmed and semi-skimmed are better options than whole milk. Think about all your milky coffees that you have. A lot of those tend to be made with whole milk. Things like cheese, cheese tends to be very high in saturated fat, but obviously there are better options out there. So again, it's deciding what's right for you. So things like cheddars and Stiltons tend to be quite high in saturated fat, whereas things like fetas and Edams and cottage cheese certainly tend to be much lower. So again, it's maybe thinking about how often I'm eating this, and is there a healthier alternative? You've obviously got your reduced fat options as well, which is a potential choice you can maybe make as well. But yeah, you really do need to be mindful of the fat content from this section. The next section that we move on to is protein. So protein is obviously your meat, your fish, your beans, your pulses, all that type of stuff. So really important, we are essentially made up of protein, so we need it to kind of form the building blocks of ourselves. So what we need to make sure again is that we're getting the right sources of them. So we know from last week, kind of 3 to 4 portions a day is what we're after. What we need to be mindful of here is kind of red meat. So red meat is okay to eat, absolutely, but maybe once, twice a week would be the absolute kind of maximum for red meat. You kind of want to limit red meat as much as possible, only because it contains much higher saturated fat than other sources, and saturated fat is the one type of fat that we want to try and limit in the diet, because that's the one that's linked to more kind of coronary heart disease and other heart conditions. So red meat, absolutely fine, once or twice a week. So things like beef, pork and lamb are all considered red meat. So you might want to think about, if you're having burgers, having chili, having lasagna, having spaghetti bolognese, is there anything you could switch there to cut down on the actual red meat but still enjoy those dishes? So you could switch the beef mince for turkey mince. There's obviously corn mince. Could you use less beef mince, maybe use lentils instead? All these kind of options there are to reduce the amount of red meat. Things like white meat, so chicken and turkey are really good choices, really healthy options. Obviously, you might want to watch the skin and stuff like that on it, but generally speaking, white meat is absolutely fine. And then fish, so white fish and then oily fish, kind of once or twice a week is what you're looking for as well. And we touched on this last week, but the other thing you might want to think about is all your beans and pulses, so chickpeas, butter beans, all that type of stuff is great for bulking out meals, really high in protein, really high in fibre, which we know is really important for us, and also count towards one of your 5 a day. So a great thing to be kind of bulking out meals with, or adding to your diet. So the next section is fruit and veg. And again, I feel this one is quite straightforward. We know fruit and veg is good for us. We know it contains all the vitamins and minerals that we need to be eating to kind of get our bodies function optimally. Apart from that, again, very high in fibre, so we know that's really important for us. So the key message with fruit and veg, we touched on this last week, is 5 a day. You want to be eating more veg than fruit, but ultimately the more the better. So things to be mindful of, maybe again, it's just the fruit juice and how much of that you're consuming. We know now that one small glass of fruit juice is absolutely fine, but anything more than that doesn't contribute to our 5 a day, it only contributes to our sugar, so we need to be mindful of that. The other thing with fruit and veg is it doesn't matter whether it's tinned or frozen or fresh, any source of it is good. So again, using myself as an example, I tend to keep quite a lot of frozen berries in the freezer, so rather than buying kind of strawberry flavoured yogurts or anything like that, I tend to just buy plain yogurt and then a handful of frozen fruit into it, and then that obviously defrosts overnight, and that's a good kind of healthy breakfast or a good healthy snack. Again, I tend to keep a couple of options of frozen veg in the freezer as well, just in case I've run out of fresh stuff. So absolutely fine to use frozen and tinned as well as obviously fresh where possible. But I think that's really the key stuff for fruit and veg. You're trying to include this at kind of all your main meals, so breakfast, lunch and dinner, and obviously thinking about your snacks during the day as well. So the last section that we come on to is back to the kind of foods high in fat and sugar. So again, your chocolate, your crisps, your cakes, your biscuits, all that type of stuff. Really, there isn't any nutritional reason to be eating it. As we've kind of touched on with all the other sections, your carbohydrates are a really good source of fibre, a good source of energy, so we need to be eating this type of stuff. Dairy and alternatives, protein and calcium, as well as some other vitamins and minerals. So an important part of the diet. Yeah, we need to be careful of the fat content, as we've touched on as well. Protein, the building blocks of us, so really important to be good quality sources of protein. And then fruit and veg, your vitamins and minerals, so again, and fibre. So a really important part of the diet. So going back to foods high in fat and sugar, there isn't really any nutritional reason to be eating it, apart from the fact that it tastes good. So these foods are really the treat foods. So really do try and be mindful of how often that you're having these foods. But what we want to stress, and it's a really important part of Make a Change, is that it's not a diet, it is a lifestyle program. These foods are okay to eat on occasion. And I think that's the key word here, is maybe have to think about how often that you're having them, how frequently, how much of it that you're consuming as well. So that might be one of the things that you want to have a wee look at. And as we've said, this isn't necessarily about eliminating foods, it's quite often about reducing or replacing foods with other healthier alternatives. So have a wee think about your goals for the week. Again, in your booklet on the Balanced Diet page, you've got your section to set a couple of goals, so really do have a think about that. Read through the supporting information that we'll send you and think, well, what can I do this week just to make my diet a bit more balanced? It might be more chickpeas or more beans, more pulses to kind of bulk out meals. It might be thinking about your fruit and veg and how much of that you're having, or it might be about reducing this stuff here, the kind of foods high in fat and sugar. So have a wee think. One of your other activities we're going to ask you to do this week is to keep a food diary. So food diaries are a really good way of just writing down how much you're eating, what you're having on a daily basis. We'll ask you to do it for 3 days initially. If you want to do more, that's absolutely fine, you can do more. But it's a good way just to kind of make you realise what you're eating and get you thinking about that. So that is one of your activities this week, which we'll ask you to do. Apart from that, I think that's all your key messages for Balanced Diet. Myself and Sam will be in touch with you all, just to see how you're doing, see you got your goals set, and see how you're getting on with them. Next week is week 3 of the programme, where we'll look at food labels. So again, I'll be back next week with another video about food labels. But in the meantime, good luck with your goals. Do get in contact with anything else we can do. But myself or Sam will be in touch with you soon. Thank you. Bye.